This episode is sponsored by Cocatel Collective, a strategic sales and marketing agency representing a highly curated portfolio of emerging beverage brands, from premium all-natural sodas, wine spritzes, and spirits all around the world.
Welcome to the In Process podcast, where we share stories of resilience and passion. We're excited that you found our YouTube channel, and we'd love to hear from you. So be sure to comment below and hit that like button. If you're enjoying these stories, be sure to subscribe and share. Enjoy the show. Welcome to this episode of In Process. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Mary. As always, we want to give a big shout out to Atmosphere and the Rhymesayers crew for sharing their music with us.
And today we are incredibly excited to introduce our guest who's been featured on 2023 Wine Enthusiast's Future 40 Tastemakers. She is the founder and brewer of Hana Makgeolli and Soju. Everyone, please welcome to the show, Alice Jun.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi. How's your morning been so far?
It was rough.
Yeah, you've had a long weekend here in Chicago.
Yep. I'm here in Chicago for my first Third Coast Soif, which was yesterday. It's a natural wine festival. It's been a long week of events, but I love Chicago.
Amazing. Well, we were incredibly excited to have you, and I hope we're just going to adjust that mic. Boop, there it is. I hope you had an incredible turnout yesterday at Soif. Sorry we couldn't make it, but...
No worries. The line was so long at every producer's table. But I think for us, it was Soif's first rice wine.
Yeah.
And I think people were really interested in learning more. So my poor voice, but it was worth it.
For those listening that aren't familiar with who you are, and why don't we at least just start off by sharing a little bit about your background and where you're from?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Alice. I'm the founder and brewer at Hana Makgeolli. We're a Brooklyn-based traditional Korean rice wine brewery. I know that's a mouthful, but there is no word for, or equivalent word for yangjujang in English. We've been making wild fermented rice wines using traditional Korean methodologies for the last 4 years out of Brooklyn. Prior to that, I was a consultant at Deloitte and an obsessive homebrewer.
I love that.
And prior to that, I was, second generation daughter to Korean immigrants, born and raised in Cali.
Cool. And where in California?
Central Coast, California, 805.
I love that. And it was Santa Maria Valley, correct?
Yeah, Santa Maria.
Cool.
And when did you make your way to the East Coast?
2011 for school. I went to NYU's undergraduate Stern School of Business. Don't really remember consciously making that decision, but I'm really glad for it.
Love that. Your upbringing, being raised, I guess, in the West Coast, and maybe share a little bit about how your upbringing had some impact. Like, how did that have an impact on, where you are today? Was there anything specific, even in an early age, or maybe later, in your early young adulthood, that had that profound impact on making makgeolli?
I think there was a push and pull, things that directly supported my eventual move into makgeolli, but also things that maybe were around about that maybe weren't so positive that still contributed to me going into makgeolli. I think directly my family, our families as Korean immigrants are still very proud of their Korean culture, no matter where they end up. Mm-hmm. And that certainly had a direct impact on me and my interest in my culture. That being said, I think for a lot of people, especially people that are not necessarily living in urban areas where a Korean community might be strong enough.
Right.
Or really present. I think I kind of grew up resisting or resenting my Korean background as well, and wanting to fit in. And that was kind of like a push away from makgeolli, but still, because I felt so distant growing up from my Korean culture, I think when I did move to New York and did connect with the Korean community, and also started brewing sool on my own, it felt that much more important and integral to like a new identity as an adult in New York, that I don't think I would have gotten if I hadn't underappreciated my culture growing up, you know?
Yeah, no, I find it really interesting. And it is definitely something I don't necessarily, it's not the experience I had, right? Coming up here in Chicago with such an enriched Asian and specifically Korean community around. But there's a lot to unpack there. And I want to see, like, first and foremost, when was that moment, or do you recall that kind of aha moment where you're like, I want to start making this? And I know that your father had a big influence on this. You want to share a little bit about your father and him making, I guess, home brewing?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I say, like, in many families, makgeolli is like a home brewed practice. You know, although it's common amongst a lot of families to make makgeolli at home, it's common in comparison to the amount of makgeolli that's commercially brewed, but still not common, period. Right? My dad, though, is certainly a foodie type. You know, grew up as an artist that was forever kind of trying to be in the kitchen, but wasn't allowed to be in the kitchen. But he viewed food as art too, and that included makgeolli. And we made it at home, and I learned how to brew makgeolli in the same way you learn how to cook. You know, just kind of by observation and using kind of your sensory skills to understand what looks right and what doesn't. So as a result, I was like brewing pretty intuitively or based off of muscle memory, because of my father's teaching. His makgeolli was also like really incredibly strong.
Oh,
And
nice.
did he learn in Korea, or is this?
Yeah, he learned from his mother, my harmony. And, you know, my harmony recently was like, you know, my grandfather was a makgeolli brewer. And me and my dad were like hearing this for the first time, so we're not really sure if that's true. But, you know, it's actually more common than not that we all have some kind of, we descend from some kind of brewer. Booze is, after all, just such a big part of every culture, but in particular Korean culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And for the listener out there that doesn't understand the term sool, care to share like a little bit about what that means?
So the technical definition that we choose to define as sool at Hana Makgeolli is any grain-based ferment made with nuruk. And so when I say grain, the emphasis is on that. Of course, it's more commonly known as a rice wine, but the Korean category is not exclusive to rice wine, and you can ferment a lot of grains in traditional ways. And then fermented with nuruk means putting an emphasis on the traditional fermentation starter at the heart of the methodology, as opposed to essentially koji yeast combinations, which would then make the product sake.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I want to kind of fast forward a little bit. So you're in New York City, and were you already homebrewing in California, or like you being involved as much as you are?
Yeah. So I moved to New York in 2011, and I started homebrewing on my own in 2011.
Oh wow.
Your first year.
Yeah, in my first year, I had a 1 gallon jar in my dorm, and I used you know those rice cookers that don't apply pressure; they like do it off the weight of the pot. You know, like
Oh,
the simple
yeah.
white people ones. Yes,
Yeah, the lid's like it doesn't even like stay on there.
it wasn't
or
even my rice cooker. It was like someone on my hall, like my floor, my dorm floor.
I love that.
Rice cooker, and I would just cook rice there.
And were you making it for you or for your friends?
I wasn't really making it for anyone.
Okay.
I was making it to make it, and then I shared it with friends. I think the thing about homebrewing is, people do it for different reasons, but if you are an active homebrewer, like sure, you could homebrew for an occasion, but sometimes you make it to make it, and then you age it to age it. Like you learn from it, and it's not about drinking it right away.
Right.
Do you recall like how your first early batches were in comparison to what it is now?
So I think for most brewers, you're typically doing like this simple tanyeongju style. So just rice water nuruk. You're not adding in feeds. You're not, and of course you could like ferment for longer, but generally speaking, tanyeongjus are quite volatile. And volatile in like the amount of flavor there is, the amount of acid there is, the amount of sugar there is, how long and strong the ferments stay active.
Yeah.
And they're typically a bit sweet. So tanyeongjus were my first kind of home brews, and that's kind of how our wines turned out. But because by default in my head, fermentation was like 1 month minimum, which is not typical actually. Most people think it's like 10 to 14 days.
Oh.
I was making near dry, so too. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I think for context, like for the listener out there that's never had this category, which is called makgeolli, growing up when I was younger, it was always the green bottle stuff, I wish I got introduced to like the other one that I really like, but it was always sweet, and it was kind of like, just didn't like, I don't know. Maybe I was growing up with a Western palate in Chicago, and at an early on, like we were just drinking a lot of whiskey. And so there was like that, at a young age, we want that sweet before we want super dry. So I'm a little bit first and foremost like, wow, like I guess maybe growing up being accustomed to a dry style from your dad.
Yeah, it changed everything.
Well, and I think too, like Hana was the first makgeolli I had that was like had a little bit more of that funk kind of that, and the acid. For me, my first experience actually drinking makgeolli was going back to Korea in college because so I grew up in Minnesota, and believe it or not, they don't sell any makgeolli even green bottle there. Or occasionally you could go to the Korean market, like the really small ones. And you'd be like, oh, do you have makgeolli? The joke would always be that you'd say like, oh, do you have makgeolli? And they'd say no. And then you'd say, 혹시 like makgeolli 있으세요? Like you'd say it in Korean, and then they would bring it out for you. Because I don't know if they had a liquor license. But yeah, I remember first having it, and it's definitely a different expression than soju. Like it's such a different experience, but like I fell in love with it, even the sweet stuff, like just having it at all in Korea.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a time and place for every style of alcohol.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like when we look at larger institutionalized, well-resourced categories like beer and wine or even sake, right? There is range.
Right.
And there are options, and there is a certain amount of critical thinking on behalf of the consumer. I think my problem with the makgeolli category prior to Hana Makgeolli existing more commercially was that there were no options. That people thought that makgeolli was monolithic in this way, where it was like, if it's not 6% ABV and sweetened with aspartame, then it's viewed as not makgeolli.
Yeah.
And that made no sense to me. especially given that complete 180 kind of starting point where all I knew was stinky sool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? So I think like it's just a matter of perspective. There's also this case that natural or traditionally fermented wines, and not just of the Korean category, but from like all over the world, traditionally fermented wines are naturally fermented wines. Naturally fermented wines are better for you and not like better for you beverage,
Right.
phrase, but just you're literally not putting shit in your body,
Yeah.
and that is really, I think, a very compelling way to try to choose what you're about to consume.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we spoke on this, and I shared my story with Alice earlier this week about how incredibly refreshing it was. It was my first experience trying Hana Makgeolli, and I was traveling in wine country in Oregon and in Willamette Valley, and we like ended up in Portland. And I had been dying to get to this restaurant, and it was Pete Cho's restaurant called Hanok, and we grabbed the last minute like notify me reservation, and we walked in, and the host was like, "Hey, I've got a little surprise for you. We moved you to the chef counter." And I just remember looking at Andrew. I was like, "Holy shit, this is crazy." And that's when I was already over the moon, just like with the experience. And then all of a sudden he came up to me and said, "Hey, you want to try this?" And I was like, "What is this?" And he's like, "I just got 12 bottles of this, and it's something called Hana." And I was like, "Holy crap." And it was your bottle of Hwaju, which I think we like kind of picked a date and year, and it turned out that it was like your first release of Hwaju.
Yeah.
And for someone that is experienced in the makgeolli category, and just going back to like all of my experiences in my youth about it being a little bit on the sweeter side for me and my palate. And when we opened up this restaurant, I was like trying to find something that I felt like was a lot more food focused. As a sommelier, I'm always looking for something with acid because I wanted to complement Andy's food. And I remember like we were at the mercy of a couple options, and I just wasn't crazy about all of them. But when I tried your Hwaju, I was like fucking floored. I was like, "Oh my God. Finally there is a makgeolli that resonated with me." It like had all of the points that I wanted, to pair with like Andy's incredible food. And I just remember at that point, I probably was already reaching out to you, or maybe that was what spurred it. And I was just like on this relentless journey to like get this here in Chicago. And I'm so glad that we can feature it here at our restaurant. I think it is something that's so unique and special. I think that you can just see like there's so much like love and intention and thought put behind your product. And we're just incredibly excited to share this with our guests.
Thank you. And that's such a wonderful story about Hwaju. And I'm like, I was so like heartwarmed when I heard that story, because Hwaju 12 for us it's our second product. The second cuvee that we launched, December 2020 is when it came out. So you probably had it like a few months afterwards if it was at Hanok. And it was a bold move at the time for us to choose to go botanical, right? So it's a Hwaju 12 is flower wine. So it's a kukwaju made with chrysanthemums and hydrangeas. And the chrysanthemums are whole bud yellow chrysanthemums, and the buds are dried closed, and then the hydrangeas are the tea leaves of the matcha varietal, and they get added into the mash in the last week of fermentation. And it is, I mean, the takju is incredibly popular, but the Hwaju is right up there in terms of sales. And that first batch, I opened a bottle of the first batch of Hwaju like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So it's 4 years old now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. and it tasted incredible.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's so fresh. And it brought me back to the moment where we bottled it. And 진짜 기가 막혔어. 진짜. I was so, because you have to understand, like, we were brewing we were trying to be so optimistic, but it was such a scary time. And we were brewing the first batches of takju under such incredible stress.
Right.
The Hwaju 12 was our first big batch, full tank batch. It turned out perfectly. It was one of those moments in production where we felt, of course we felt joy when we got to market, but there was a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But the Hwaju was pure joy.
I love that.
And it was, the first of many new releases where we were like, okay, like, this is how we want to feel when we put out something new.
I love that. I want to back it up a little bit because I think for people listening, it's important that, I think for people to understand how your process is when in regard to like sourcing, because I think it's something that we do highlight here for people when they're interested in trying this, but it's important that you guys are sourcing high quality ingredients, right? You're getting your rice domestically. Do you want to just kind of share a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So whether you refer to it as rice wine or rice beer, most makgeolli still is not made with rice, and people don't know that. So let's just start there, right? The guksundangs, the warm, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention
Yeah,
this,
it's all right. Don't worry.
the conventional green bottle styles of makgeolli are typically made with like processed or like bleached wheat flours, tapioca starches, potato starches. And well, no, those are not necessarily bad things, right?
Great.
Sool is inclusive of all grain-based ferments.
Right.
But the problem with the conventional style is that these starches are so processed already by the time that you're fermenting with them that then they're not really contributing any kind of interesting nutritional value to the ferment, and therefore they can't produce interesting flavors. Right. So when we're talking about rice and the importance of rice, we're first of all looking at the nutritional composition of rice. The starches, of course, contribute sugars that turn into alcohol, but there's additionally fats and proteins and a little bit of fiber and some minerals, and every rice is different. And they ferment differently as a result. And if you tried, I know this is like kind of like taking wine terms, but it's my way of understanding it. When you're fermenting with a wild starter, of course you're reflecting the microbial terroir of the location of where you captured the starter. But there's additionally an expression of rice. Right?
Oh,
so
okay.
every rice is going to express something different.
Interesting.
So when we were selecting our rice, I think the way we started was, what is the story that we want to tell? And actually that story was firstly about Korean rice. We were going to source rice from Korea.
Yeah.
But then we launched when global supply chains were breaking down.
Right.
And we could not get rice from Korea because remember like the lines of boats at the ports and stuff?
Yeah.
So there was no way we can get rice from Korea at the time. So we started to look domestically. And, of course, there is now a small industry for sake rice and growing sake rice and selling brewers sake rice. But there isn't a market for sool rice specifically. So we were looking primarily for the quality of the grow. And for us, that meant no pesticides, which is actually quite rare in staple grain industries, especially pest-prone crops like rice.
Right.
Of course, our farmer, who we ultimately ended up partnering with, was Pollitt Farms, and we source 99.5% of our rice all exclusively from them. And our last 4 years of production have all been Pollitt Farms grains. And they're one of the few farmers that don't spray.
And they're located in California.
Maxwell, California, and Sacramento Valley, like an hour and a half north and inland of San Francisco.
Oh.
And, so Hana Makgeolli is an expression of California grown rice.
Yeah.
And it is an expression of, a family farm. And it is an expression of like olive orchards, neighboring rice fields.
Oh, I love that.
And, there's a story to it. And we also love our farmer and we love working with them. So the story of Hana is about the story of Pollitt Farms too. And we were so lucky to partner with them. We're buying about how many tons a year? I don't know.
A lot. That's awesome.
Like about 10 tons, I think,
Yeah.
a year. Last year we produced 3,000 cases, so it's at least, it's at least 20,000 pounds.
Wow.
And it's really important for us to highlight the rice that we use because of this complete lack of education around the
Right.
ingredients involved in sool.
Yeah.
I really love how much you highlight the farm too. Like even when you came into Perla a couple days ago, naming them, and just they're such a big part of your process too. And I feel like I'm learning more and more about how difficult it is to farm without pesticides, but how important it is. I've learned a little bit more about tea in the last couple months, and it's just like pretty crazy. But I'm curious, how long did the process of finding them, or did you go through so many batches of different rice farmers?
Yeah. And, we were, it's actually quite hard. It was hard to find a farmer that would work directly with us because they're used to just selling to their distributors, right? 10 tons is a lot for us still, but it's actually not a lot for the farm.
Oh,
So do
wow.
they want to be wasting their time working with, a little company that buys 4,000 or 6,000 pounds at a time?
Right.
Go through the trouble of packing it, coordinating shipping with them, all this stuff. So it's equally a Pollitt Farm equally contributes to the relationship too.
I love that. I want to touch on the company here. So we are young Alice in New York, and your friends are like, Alice, this stuff is the shit. You gotta sell it. And when was it that like moment where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna fucking go for this. Like, what was the switch that happened?
So like I'm really lucky in the sense that like, so you have to understand, like Hana is 4 years old on the market, right? But like I was working on this for like 6 years
Before
prior
that.
to that,
Oh.
So it's a long time coming. My friends had to have so much patience with it. Can you imagine a friend that wouldn't shut up talking about the same thing for 10 years? Like ridiculous amounts of time and soot have been drunk. And one friend in particular that was the most supportive and like marks the turning point from when Hana became a bootleg project to an actual brewery is the friendship with John Lim, my business partner.
Mm-hmm.
So 2017 we met. Met John and Judy Hong outside of Miss U when they first opened in the Lower East Side.
Miss you? Oh shit! Esther's restaurant.
Esther's restaurant.
What?
And this is 2017, and then he had tried the makgeolli because someone had brought it from like a party we threw at a co-working space in Williamsburg. And then they brought a bottle to a barbecue he was at, and it was he was on the board of Great American Story at the time.
Oh.
And he had tasted a version of the Tokju 16 and was like, what the hell is this? And then we met, and then there was like a few months of him like, coming and checking out my
Facility.
bootleg a pilot brew system and coming to my events and stuff. And I was so naive. I just thought he was like being a good friend and a mentor. But of course he was like sussing me out to go into business together.
Yeah.
And then later on, another person had asked me if I was interested in going into business with them, and I had asked John for advice. And he was like, ... no, ... I would be your business partner, ... And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's happening.
No shit.
Wow.
And that's the relationship that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Of course, so many people, incredible people support us along the way, but no one has championed Hana Makgeolli like John Lim.
I love that.
Yeah.
Shout out to John Lim. So like these pop-ups, I obviously we're not in the New York scenes, but so you were kind of like, what was happening here? You were just like talking
My pop-ups?
Yeah, your pop. Like, well,
Yeah.
I guess like in the early stages before you and John decided to take this thing as far as it's gone today.
My first official Hana Makgeolli event, like outside of my kitchen or like outside of my friend's kitchen, was at the UN.
Oh.
We were doing a makings of makgeolli homebrewing class for the Korean Culture Society inside the UN. So it's the internal group.
What is the UN?
United Nations.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, we're talking about the same thing here?
I mean, yes, it's the UN, but it was kind of like this like casual class for the internal Korean community, an organization of the UN, but it was cool people.
Yeah.
So that was my first event. And then from there, it went to, my dad's calling me, sorry.
That's all right.
We started getting invited to like restaurants, and most of the restaurants were like, oh, you're a home brewer, this is not licensed, never mind. But then some restaurants were like, oh hell yeah, like I'll just give you cash.
Wow.
Oh
yeah.
And
we won't name
you
those
can pour
restaurants,
some-
but that's shout out to all of them.
yeah, and you can compare your wines with the food and things like this, and then of course there's the parties and the gallery openings and
Yeah.
just crazy things. The 2016, 2017, when we started doing the pop-ups, was when pop-ups were like really starting to become a thing in New York. And there wasn't as many like pop-up chefs in the city, as certainly as there is now. So it still felt very new and young and exciting back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you always, so when you were at Deloitte, was that always just kind of your day job and you dreamt of Hana Makgeolli, or would you say?
Hana Makgeolli was like my serious hobby on the side, but I also enjoyed my job at Deloitte. Like I really, really liked being a consultant. So it wasn't something that like I was always thinking about while working at Deloitte, but it would be, I was traveling Monday through Thursday. One of those years was mostly spent in Chicago, so that's also why I love the city.
Yeah.
But the home brewing was like what I did with all my free time after I got home.
So you decide. So was it called? Was Hana already? I know the story is kind of like,
Hana Makgeolli was the name I came up with in my apartment in 2017 when I was like, okay, I'm going to publish the Instagram. Yeah.
That's when it's official. When it's IG, it's like not an LLC.
Was it 2016?
Like an LLC
or
means nothing.
I don't remember.
But the name means
Hana is my Korean name, Jun of Hana.
Jun of Hana.
Yeah. And it's my name. It's not very original. I always tell people, but like I wasn't trying to be creative and create a brand. I was just trying to like make my homebrews look cute. And that's the name that I felt like was the only one I felt comfortable putting out there. Cause like imagine if I was like, I don't know, like made up a fancy Korean name. Like I don't know, like like Mindele Makgeolli. Like it wouldn't feel like mine.
Hana rolls off the tongue easy. It's great.
Yeah. And then, you know, a purely American name or a purely English name didn't feel appropriate either. I think it was an identity thing. So
And the logo there's a beautiful story behind that.
yeah, so the logo, I think there's a couple ways I was approaching the design. One is like I wanted her to be a personification of the general flavor profiles of the wine, which is like pretty strong for makgeolli, ABV wise.
Yeah.
Round, warming, pretty disciplined and structured, but still like nurturing. And then her body shaped like a ongi, which is the traditional Korean fermentation vessels. Oh, I forgot she's a woman in the first place because it was women that invented and documented and experimented and advanced the methodology that is sool making. And then her head is the letter H somewhat abstractly in Korean for Hana.
Oh, you know what? I don't know if I caught that
I
one.
never caught that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And then, you know, I think she's like a bit aspirational. Like if, I don't know if I want to put this on a podcast, but everyone, you know, I think when people saw that I was making makgeolli, they just assume that it's like this like girly girl thing.
Ah.
And I wanted it to be very clear that it's a fucking girly girl thing, but it's not the girly girl you're insinuating, you know, like she's not yours.
I love
Right.
that.
So like she's meant to feel a little bit rock and roll too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like the time of like, you know, skinny wines and like all of that, you know, stuff was coming out. So I love that.
As I was going to say, so that in 2016, 2017, things are brewing quite literally. But I know that like more recently and probably closer to when Hana launched in 2020, there's been I feel like a resurgence of makgeolli, not only in Korea. I feel like makgeolli was kind of the sourdough starter of the pandemic for a lot of Koreans, from what I've heard.
Oh my God.
Where everyone's making it. But even I feel like on Netflix, there's been so many nods to makgeolli.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that's changing or changed the trajectory of sool in the US and Korea, like what your thoughts on all of that is?
Yeah. So we are in a renaissance for sool, but it's still in its very early days. So whatever like sense of renewed interest that you're feeling like you're seeing, I feel like it's not even the half of it yet.
Yeah.
The one part of the renaissance is this renewed interest in Korea. But there had been renewed interest in Korea for a very long time, right? But it is the decision of hundreds of young people to try to make their own makgeolli, to stand up their own brands and play in the sool market in Korea. That's the thing that makes this movement different. There are so many new producers, and it is an incredible indicator of that the Renaissance is here to stay, like that there's actual infrastructure being built. And that's certainly what we're trying to do on the U.S. side of things, is to give some domestic infrastructure to consumer education, menu placement and verbiage, pricing, all this stuff, so that we can have a longer future for this new wave here as well. I think that a lot of people, or like a few producers in the past, or like certain waves of efforts from the Korean government, were trying to prop up makgeolli in the way that it is now. In 2013 to 15, and like prior to that, it was like 2006 to 2008. There was incredible investment and interest in makgeolli. But right now, it's at a place where I don't think anyone that was involved in sool, either as a home brewer or commercially, thought it would be. I think you can equate it to like us, if you're looking at the development of the sake market in outside of Japan, but in particular in the U.S., it was a 20 to 25 year movement.
Right.
You know, I think we don't have the production volume that sake has, but I think culturally we've made more of an impact in less time.
Wow.
Right.
That's remarkable.
That's a great point.
So that's where we are now. Like that's
Yeah.
where you're meeting the food market now. Yeah.
I want to touch base on where you are right now. You are located
In Greenpoint, Brooklyn. It's a northern neighborhood, northern area of Brooklyn, just under Long Island City, like just across the East River from Midtown Manhattan. Pretty industrial neighborhood. We have a 2,500 square foot space, which is 25 feet by 100 feet. Just to like give you some
Yeah.
perspective. It's not a ton of space.
Yeah.
And we've been producing, last year we produced 3,000 cases out of that space.
Which for people that are not in the beverage industry, it is not that big on the scope of like what people see at their local liquor store with like a Veuve Clicquot,
Yeah.
you know, where they're doing like hundreds of thousands of cases. But you have also a tasting room that I have unfortunately not been to, but I'd love to hear a little bit about it. And if a listener is traveling to New York, they can easily stop by and check you guys out.
Yep. So our tasting room is open Thursday through Sunday. It's been open since August of 21, and we've been offering, of course, our sool, all available unpasteurized on draft, as well as like a small anju program where you can get kind of either like traditional Korean dishes that are typically drunk with makgeolli, or like our fun take on X that pairs well with makgeolli. And yeah.
There's some cocktails too, right, over there?
We also cocktail with all of our sool. And, you know, I always like to say, like, for most winemakers, you never really catch them saying, hey, mix shit with my shit. But we are very into mixing shit with our shit.
It's also in other restaurants in New York in cocktails as well, right?
Yeah,
Hana?
absolutely.
Some of the best restaurants in New York.
It's so fun. And, you know, I think that's what we're trying to do with Hana is like, it's not just about bringing makgeolli back in a way that Koreans or Korean Americans expect us to, right? Or maybe even want us to. We're trying to expand the use case for makgeolli, right? We're trying to prove its applicability and functionality, and that means its pairability with, of course, Korean cuisine, but cuisines outside of Korean cuisine. It's about cocktailing. It's about being able to present it and make it feels, you know, well integrated in all kinds of different occasions, from tastings to parties to dinners.
Right.
You know, I think that the one thing that's really important about producers or makers of cultural products
Right.
is that even though you're making a product that is based on heritage, it only goes back to worsen the point of the lack of diversity if you're not willing to share it with more people. And Hana Makgeolli, I feel like, reaches so many different kinds of people.
Yeah.
Albeit the 60% of our consumer base is between the ages of 25 and 35. But that's really the only defining demographic.
Yeah.
And then the backgrounds, you know, cultural, social, economic, go everywhere.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you touched on like this idea that like, or I guess not an idea, it's just kind of a mission to make this more, you know, applicable and wide ranged. And I think that, for what it's worth, like I've been in the beverage world for a long time, and I've seen like the kind of ebbs and flows and patterns of like what these mixologists are playing with. And I can tell you now more than ever is a time it's cocktail culture throughout the whole world.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting about being able to share your product is that I think like there are mixologists out there that are super eager to find new ingredients that they can play with and create something that's really special and unique. And I think that Hana Makgeolli and all of its products, and we'll talk about the soju in just a moment, really does lend a fresh set of palate flavors for and texture, nuances. I know our bar manager at the new restaurant that we're opening is like really excited to play with some of this stuff, and I'm super excited to see this category of soul really start to show itself in some of the best cocktail bars.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
not to mention being represented. I touched on this earlier, but like you told me about JP and Elia with and maybe you're listening to the show and you're like, I don't really drink or I don't really dive into beverage so much, but you do know food. And if you know food, you probably are aware of like some of the best restaurants in New York City right now, and arguably the country. The chef, owner, and partner of Atto Mix and Atto Boy have been a big supporter of your brand for a very long time. And I think that says the world about your products, because these are probably two of the, not pickiest, but they're very focused on quality. And I think that says a ton about what you're providing and how eager they are to share your product.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. We're so lucky to have, so many incredible accounts, including Perla. But yeah, when we talk about, no one can do something like we're doing with Hana Makgeolli alone, right? But for some reason, like outside of our own merit, I'm sure there's an aspect of luck to it too. Like launching in COVID, being able to survive that,
Right.
being able to reap the tiniest bit of a silver lining in COVID, which is that like people had the bandwidth to learn about a new category from home.
Yeah.
The timing of that, the serendipity of that, how unique and special that was, despite how hard it was. I think that we've been so lucky. And, my family always says like we're like pokmana. And I am so grateful that things are coming together, because it's not, I agree that of course, like I love my production, right? And I love our wines, and of course I personally believe in their merit, but if it was not us, it would have been someone else, right? I and like maybe they wouldn't have done it like us,
Right.
but someone would have tried, and people are trying still.
Yeah.
And it's in a good way now, but I think that I don't know where I was going with this. Can we cut that out?
Yeah, no. Here's what I'll say. I love and respect the humility, and I agree 100%. We talked about this earlier this week. There's always a factor of luck that goes into success, but I firmly believe that you have had the success that you've had based on your intention. I think people see you behind the product. I think people see the care and love that you and your team, shout out to your entire team over there. I think that at the end of the day, sure, there's a little bit that plays into that. You might be one of the few people that are like, COVID, there was like this silver lining, and most of us would agree that there was some incredible growth that happened from COVID, especially within our industry. But at the end of the day, Alice, I think that you are putting so much into your product. There's like a lot of love and intention, and I think people recognize that at the end of the day. And sure, like, would there be other makgeolli producers? Will there be more makgeolli producers? 100%. But like anything out there in the world, I think that there are people that choose to look beyond just the face value of something and see that there's deeper meaning and appreciation in this. And I think that I don't want to take that away from what you've done and the amount of time that you've put into developing this and your partner.
There is a difference between, and I appreciate you calling me out on it. You know, I think that the one thing, and I keep thinking about, what was that phrase about decisions you were talking about yesterday? The other day you were like, remember, like, make good decisions and no bad decisions.
Yeah, it's the best advice I've ever gotten from our business partner. It's success is, there's an easy formula for success. You just say yes to all the right decisions and no to all the bad ones.
And it's like such a silly, funny little comment, but that resonated with me because I do think that we did say yes and no to the right things early on.
Right.
And that we continue to do yes and say yes and no to the right things now. And the thing about Hana and like the operation and business philosophy between Sean and I is that we do think about the long term.
Right.
And we do think about the ethics of the business.
Right.
And we do think about, of course, our team and the people and the community that surround us first before, I don't know, let's say like branding or virality or
bottom line.
Right.
Right.
You know, it is important that Hana Makgeolli has and always will have some, you know, a strong economic case and foundation. Because that's what it's going to really take for Sue to stay.
Yeah.
Right? But the cultural decisions that we make are made with a sense of responsibility. And in that way, I think we are different. And that we were the right ones to introduce Sue to people.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's not just like what you're making, but what you're doing after the fact. That is so respectable and admirable about your, like, the courage to do what you're doing. Like, first and foremost, let me just say this. If I was going to do this, which, believe me, there was a conversation at one point from a good friend of mine who's just like always looking to like invest in something like great. And Tim definitely doesn't listen to this, but if you're listening, Tim, shout out to you. He was like, let's do makgeolli. And I was just like, dude, that's like hard, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, okay, so my point is that it might have been easier route to just do soju first. Like, I think most people would have been like, yeah, let's start there. Then we capture a crowd or demographic, and then we can introduce the harder category. You chose to go first on makgeolli,
Yeah.
you know, because that's what you knew and that's what you did, and people are loving it. And now, a little segue into soju, which
Speaking of soju,
tell us about what's happening right now.
So we released Hana Soju 60 in December of last year. It is our first distillate. It's Takju 16 essentially. The base mash is fermented for 100 days rather than 28 days.
Wow.
Sent to for distillation. We do single pass distillation in a copper pot still, low and slow. And then we bottle at proof or bottle at still proof, meaning there's no water. So the net for Hana Soju 60 is 60% ABV or 120 proof. And I know it's crazy.
No.
But
this
it's
is my favorite
actually
part about
not.
this whole thing. So one thing that blew me away was, and I think, you know, for the person listening right now that's like, okay, how do you make alcohol? Most of the time, right? And this is where I was even like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Most of the time, the alcohol you're drinking in a bottle of vodka, whiskey, tequila, there is a main ingredient in there, and that ingredient is called ethanol. And
You can derive it from a lot of different places.
Right. And here's the wow moment. Guess what? There are so many different qualities and levels of ethanol out there. There's like really good shit and really bad shit. And most of the time you're drinking the really bad shit because most of the commercially produced ethanol comes out of Indiana here. It's like they're one of the biggest producers. So heads up to your
Neutral
Tito's
grain
drinkers
spirit.
out there. You're drinking some pretty gnarly stuff from probably Indiana. It's not even made in Austin. But I want to go back to this because your product has no ethanol added.
No.
So it like that is something that's hard to. I think most people just like that's for at least me, like beverage people. Like that's like a
Yeah.
hard thing to wrap my head around because your yield then
Oh, tiny.
is so small.
Tiny. You know, that's the craft. That's why there are some bottles of, I don't know, single malt scotch,
Right.
things like this that are hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And it's not just about time in barrel.
Right.
It's about what it took to get the thing into barrel first. And while categories like scotch, people don't even raise an eyebrow at that,
Right.
you know, at the price tag. Soju is entirely dismissed as a category from any kind of like, I kind of actually do mean this in this dramatic of a way, respect.
Yeah.
Because it's been like so ingrained into us that soju and then implicitly as a result, Korean alcohols should be a cheap, quick time.
Right.
But like every category of alcohol in the world, soju comes from a place of deep history, methodology, complexity, and variety in finishing styles. And we're just starting to see like the smallest modicum of comprehension outside of Korea that this kind of soju exists. And the idea with Hana Soju 60 was to really challenge people's opinions about the category. Because I do think that despite the fact that we're still growing, for the people who do know us, we are a trusted voice and a trusted partner in their understanding and learning of sur.
I love that.
So when we introduce our soju to them, they trust that they're learning something new. And then the path that we chose to take them on is high proof soju.
Yeah.
Because it's pure. There's nothing in it to adulterate. It's everything. And it's also from a most winemakers or brewers' perspective, it is literally the distillate of your work.
Wow.
So it's like kind of like this pinnacle moment for you. Yeah.
Alice, if you don't mind, just because I don't know how much our listeners know about the history of makgeolli and soju, just touching at least briefly upon green bottle soju, green bottle makgeolli. I know there's a lot of history just to kind of differentiate and for those who don't know as much.
Big picture, sur as a category and its like sur specific methodologies have a documented history of 2,000 plus years old, right? Our brewing practices come and distilling practices mainly come from Mongolian brewing and distilling practices that entered the Korean peninsula and then was reinterpreted based off of the resources in that peninsula, which was like rice and other grains. And also like this practice around making meju, which has a lot of similarities to making nuruk, and then nuruk being a really great and powerful and resilient culture to ferment alcohol, blah, blah, blah. So thousands of years of history making this sur this way. And then, you know, in the 1900s or starting just before the 1900s is really when we start to see major changes in sur production and methodology as a result of quite like fabricated events, like, you know, home brewing ban, Grain Management Act, consolidation of breweries, regulation of those breweries, of course, like industrialized brewing and technology, of course, influenced this as well. But it was mainly quite restrictive, oppressive events in history that birthed green bottle soju, that birthed kuksundang and conventional styles of makgeolli.
Interesting.
And it was, you know, a lack of rice and a restriction against using rice that ended up with us having makgeolli with tapioca flour.
Wow.
Right? It was the pushing out of Korean industries and introduction of Japanese sake production methods, aka koji and rice yeast, or what Koreans refer to as ipguk in production, that pushed us towards moving away from Nuruk ferments entirely. And then, so green bottle soju and conventional makgeolli are rather contemporary products, but they are defining for a generation because that generation's memory of what sool is was manipulated. Does that make sense?
No, totally. And I mean, I don't know if the first time I had not green bottle soju or makgeolli, because when you go to Korea, so you know you're going to 7-Eleven and you know the soju's
and
cheaper
they're
than water.
accessible, and that's also very important. I have like nothing against that, but my problem is like when like restaurants like this put so much time and energy and effort into their food programs. They're trying so hard to share Korean food culture with their guests. And then they only have access to Korean beverage products that are too sweet for their food.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it kind of kills the whole experience, right? When every other cuisine in the world, French, American, you know, they have like all these really, really thoughtful beverage programs with so many options for people. And like there's entire freaking professions dedicated to creating magical moments within those options. And sool has nothing, right? So, and I know you guys carry Gyeongmun and KMS, and really in the US for Cheontongju, it's mainly KMS and us in terms of options. But compared to 5 years ago, that's like a 1,000% growth rate, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I was literally, when we opened up this restaurant, you know, dealing with those same issues. Like I remember like, I don't even know how much, I was like pestering Alice at this point. I was like pestering Kyungmoon. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why am I at the mercy of this stuff that's here? And I could not wait to share like these other products with our guests, because as a sommelier, like I grew up studying, you know, all of these like incredible practices and the time that like, you know, people are putting into creating this like incredible product. There's pride, right? I had pride in putting a bottle of an Irie Vineyards Pinot Noir on the table, and I didn't share that pride with like Jinro. I didn't share that pride with Kuksundang. But when I finally got my hands on your products and Kyungmoon's products, I was like floored. You know, I could not wait to share a story behind something that I was eager to share with people. And now, you know, like just touching back on like the management of rice, I think for people that aren't familiar with like the history of Korea, it's like that's the Japanese occupation. Like you only need to watch like Pachinko to understand like the challenges, right, of like that kind of oppression that was put on, and like how little rice we were given. And after hearing this now, I'm just like, every time I look at those bottles, it's just going to remind me of that, you know, because and that's there's hardship there. So
on a lighter note, though, Alice, there's a story we want to share, or I want to share with you. Speaking of Kyungmoon as well, a big shout out to both Hana Makgeolli and KMS. So I don't know if you know this, but actually Thomas and I met because of Hana Makgeolli and because of KMS. So we both had aha moments. Similarly, I was in New York, but Thomas was in Portland. And so I had come to Perla once before, and I was living in Minneapolis at the time. And I had already made a reservation to come down for Restaurant Week to dine at Perla because they were doing a special pocha menu and a special palace style, palace style and street food menu. And I was really excited. I hadn't seen a lot of royal Korean food, and excited to see what Perla was going to do. While I'm in New York, I had Hana had been on my list. Was so excited to come. I had come to the tasting room, which I think had just opened the December before.
Yeah.
Super excited. Brought my friends. We did a tour, and it was something where something clicked for me. I would go out and go to all these different places, Korean restaurants. I was so excited to see what New York was doing. And I would get home and I would stay up until 6 a.m. reading. And I listened to all the podcasts I could find about makgeolli and just the things going on because I was so excited. And I actually, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I actually Amazon primed a suitcase to my friend's apartment because I realized that domestically I couldn't get any of this in Minnesota, but you can fly with it.
Oh, right.
And so I shipped a suitcase just to bring sool back to Minnesota. But one of the things I did is I had a cheongju, one of the KMS cheongjus that is now sold in Perla, that I had never heard of makgeolli where there's no sediment in it, and that kings and queens drank this. And so in my excitement to come to Perla as well, I was like, okay, well, what can I bring for Perla? This is so fitting that not only are we going to be eating palace-style food, but I have this bottle that I can share with them.
Drink.
Yes, palace-style drink. And so when I came in, Thomas and our first conversation was about Hana. I shared my experience just being blown away. He shared his experience being in Portland, and that's what the conversation that really we met over.
Bringing people together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Right? It is that moment where you're like, what the fuck? This is so good.
Yeah.
And you're so taken away that you just can't say anything and you need time after your first sip or your first swallow, And it's the reason why we do what we do. It is the hospitality of it. It is the enjoyment of it, the pleasure of things that we do what we do. And, sool is such an incredible vehicle for that kind of excitement and inspiration. And yeah, I'm so glad that you guys see it, because if people like you don't see it, then there's no future for the sool category. But we have to keep it alive because it's worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are some of your favorite? What do you like to pair with? Well, let's start with the classic stuff. Are there any favorite pairings of yours?
I love tteokju with super spicy food, chili driven spice though.
Okay.
Not salty spice. Meaning let's say Korea's really spicy kimchi flavors. That's more of a salty spice.
Yeah.
But chili spice is bird's eye chili, that kind of spice. So cuisines that center those kinds of flavors, Vietnamese or Thai food, is exceptionally good with tteokju. The Hwaju 12, which is the chrysanthemum wine that you liked. Of course, it's really good with Korean food, but my favorite thing is fruit and cheese pairings with that.
Oh, cool.
It's so soft and pretty, you know? And then yakju, we were doing this yesterday at Swaf. You just dump it into an oyster and shoot the oyster.
Oh.
Bomb. But obviously, you should have it with hue too, you know? So pairing wise, again, super versatile. It depends on what you're eating. It depends on what you're in the mood for.
Right.
Yeah. What are you in the mood for? That we approach every other category like this except for Korean sool. But now we need to get to a place where people have the the tools to be able to critically think about the sool they're going to drink
Yeah.
and choose things with purpose.
I love that. And I'm super excited. We are now officially carrying your soju. And after learning more about it, I'm so eager to have some fun with this and enjoy it myself. Maybe do some pork belly barbecue and just little sip. Super excited. I wonder if you're ever going to play with because the world is obsessed with age statements. I remember at a point in time, maybe 15 years ago, you couldn't get a bottle of, age statement Japanese whiskey,
age statement.
Yeah. But now the world, because of, I mean, things have probably changed, but there was a production issues. And so they couldn't keep up with demand. So now they're blending a style to represent that age statement. But is that ever something you want to play with soju?
So we haven't done a ton of blending, and we have done a ton of aging, but it's all really small volumes because we don't have tanks that are dedicated for aging. We need to brew our core lines with them.
Yeah.
But I absolutely do believe in the value of aging for sool. It's a really common misunderstanding of the category for people to just blanket think that all sool has an expiration date. First of all, distillates don't expire, but most people know that. I will give you that credit. But even for fermented wines, it just depends on the wine and how it's made, right? And if there's sorbates in there that are going to expire, it's going to have an expiration date because the sorbates expire and not the product necessarily, right? But it was also made in a way where it needed sorbates to be able to have a little bit more longevity. If you're talking about cheontongju, the high ABVs, the low pH ranges, the healthy amounts of acid are all really structurally sound, foundations for a wine to be able to age.
Yeah.
And it tastes really good.
I love that.
It tastes really, really good. And it's not really a practice that's still even common in Korea, although there is, of course, some cheontongju brewers that are aging a little bit. And I think, categories like whiskey, Japanese whiskeys, whether it's a brand and allocation thing or not, these producers have the uninterrupted history to have been able to age that way in the first place. Sool does not have that privilege, right? Not yet. So, 25 years from now, maybe we'll start seeing stuff.
I can't wait to see a 25-year aged Hana soju bottle one day. I want to at least just shed a little light for someone that's listening that's cool, this is it. I'm sold. I want to go get a bottle of Hana Makgeolli. One, most of our listeners are here in Chicago. We do have some listeners around the world, but if you're in Chicago, who's carrying it? Retail that someone can just go and hopefully a small business shop as opposed to
in no particular order. And you should go to our stockist website and see which store is closest to you, because you should go support your neighborhood store that carries us. But some stores that I was bopping around town this week are Red and White, Konbini Kompai,
yes, those guys.
We're at Diversey. And then you can go get a bite at Cellar Door next door, So these are some shops that we know and love in Chicago that carries us, and typically to carry the whole lineup, which is the exciting thing about the Chicago market, is most of our accounts carry everything.
That's awesome.
You don't always see that. Yeah. So that's cool.
They can buy from you direct too.
Yeah, we do some out-of-state shipping. We go to 42 states, so almost nationwide shipping.
Just not Minnesota.
I know their laws.
Sorry.
Some state laws
Gophers.
are very prohibitive.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then, obviously, if you get a chance to come to New York, please come by the tasting room. And we can help you pick out bottles. That's the fun moment. I love helping pick out bottles for people.
You guys do clubs too?
We have a wine club, like 130 members strong right now.
Whoop, whoop.
We're doing a quarterly wine club. Next release is dropping May, just before Mother's Day.
Cool.
It's gonna have our newest batch of the Omija Makgeolli in it, which is like the summer star girl of our soup portfolio.
What does that mean? Summer Star Girl?
She's summer star girl. she's the star for summer.
Gotcha.
So that's coming out this April. Yeah, please support your local makgeolli brewery.
Awesome. I want to touch some time on your visit here with us in Chicago.
Yeah.
And we have a little room in here for some New York stuff too. But any favorite moments from your trip so far? And any recent spots here in Chicago that you went and ate some food at?
I think, honestly, one of my highlights was 1 a.m. Thomas's mom's kimbap saving my life after drinking too much wine. That was top meal for sure. Had the pleasure of going to Kasama on this trip for brunch. Ate everything way too fast because it's so freaking good.
Yeah. Shout out to Kevin, you, and Jeannie and Tim, and the whole team over there. Josh, big shout out to you too.
And, mainly I was bopping around all kinds of natural wine bars. I went to Fish 312.
312 Fish Market, Jackson and Joe.
Oh my God, so
cool,
good.
Right?
Yes. And it's BYOB, y'all.
Yes. All the cork dorks go there already. So
yeah. It's so fun. And then we went shopping for snacks in the store afterwards. I think that Chicago has this incredibly unique food and beverage scene. And you don't get this kind of community everywhere you go. And it's probably the reason why it's so incredible is because everyone is like so supportive of each other. Every meal is in Chicago is great. Like I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, there's so much more to see.
Can't wait to come back for Steakhouse.
Yes. And hopefully James Beard.
Yes.
So gotta get you a James Beard category. We gotta do like a James Beard best makgeolli category. And it's just Alice and Hana Makgeolli on that category list, on that ballot. So if you're listening, JBF. The perfect day. What is like your perfect day?
Just to get to know you a little bit better, Alice. Like if you could have it your way.
Perfect day.
Yes.
But is it like a normal day, like a work day?
It's whatever day is that perfect day for you. If that's a day of work, like amazing. If it's like a day off.
Most of my days are work, and actually days off are still a bit of a struggle for me. Like I don't really, I have trouble predicting when I'm gonna have a day off. So as a result, like I don't make plans, and then I just relax. So I'll just choose the typical work day. My ideal day is a slow morning. Wake up 8:30. It takes about an hour to wake up my dog.
Oh my God.
So like I need to like slowly start working on that, make breakfast, make coffee, like coax him out of bed, go on a nice long walk, like 45 minutes is ideal in the morning.
Oh.
And then come back in and head to work. My favorite days at the brewery are days when we are working on one brew at a time, and I could focus on brewing in the morning and then admin stuff like computer work in the afternoon. And then, staying for when the tasting room opens and seeing those first few tables come in, saying hi.
Yeah.
Early on is like when our regulars come in. So I like being able to like talk to people and catch up. And then like heading home early and making my own dinner. That's a big one for me for my ideal day.
What are you cooking?
I cook all kinds of things, but I do have somewhat of a reputation for being like the Italian grandma of the group.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You doing pasta from scratch or?
No, but my sauces are good.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
You know, and just I enjoy simple, productive, quiet days is my ideal.
What are you
Nothing
consuming?
too exciting.
TV, YouTube, reading a book with your pasta?
I'm reading 2 books a month this year. That's the resolution, and I'm keeping up with that. That's pretty good. I'm reading a really interesting book right now called The Still Life of Rice, which I know is like really on the nose for me, but
Whoa. That's cool.
yeah, it's a wonderful novel involving some Korean history, involving, you know, Korea's food history, things like this. So yeah, that's what I'm consuming. I'm not a huge TV person.
Oh.
Although I am looking forward to House of Dragon season 2.
Okay. Very cool. I want to, because you're here, you're a guest in our beautiful city, but you are well woven in the community and fabric of New York City. It's a rare opportunity for us to get some shout outs for New York City.
Yes.
Now, I am keeping in mind that you represent a lot of businesses over there, but like if there's anything that like you absolutely love, maybe like some late night bites or some quick grabs or like a recent place you went to.
Yeah.
Any places you want to shout out?
You know, I love Chef Huni. We go way back, and for quick eats and so close to the brewery, I love the little panchan shop. The quality of the Korean ingredients coming out of that place is insanity.
Cool.
And it's perfectly balanced. You know,
It's called Little Panchan Shop.
Little
It's in
Panchan
LAC,
shop.
right?
It's in LIC.
What is that? What is LAC?
Long Island City.
Oh,
It's like
Far.
the most west-south part of Long Island, closest to the city.
Oh, okay.
It's like where the Midtown Tunnel goes through and stuff.
Cool.
In terms of restaurant concepts, you know, my friend Chef Kate, she was the previous chef of Porcelain, which is a diner in Ridgewood, Brooklyn. She recently switched over and is making like her take on Sichuan cuisine and Chinese cuisine at Tolo in New York. That's a really fun and exciting new program. In terms of like soup pairings and things like this, I can't not mention the Ataboy and Atomix families. You know, the beverage director there, Jonelle, is a huge advocate for Korean food, and I think so many people look towards non-hospitality for, you know, to set the standard for Korean food in New York, and it sets the standard for food as well.
Cool.
Yeah. And there's just like so many incredible pop-up chefs in New York. And we ourselves host a pop-up at the brewery like every 2 weeks,
I love that.
which is quite a lot of programming.
Every 2 weeks.
We have a guest come in every 2 weeks almost.
Cool.
Yeah. And
It's a full-time job, just scheduling it.
Yes, poor
Jesus.
Kevin Yu. Another shout out to another Kevin Yu. Yeah, and like I mean, it's like the best thing because like the hot and exciting new chefs get to come to the brewery and we get to pair our food with it and then try it in the context of like our production. So
Love that.
that's definitely the highlight, like cuisine rise when it comes to our food.
Cool. That takes us into what's going to be our next segment here.
Okay.
We talked about this briefly. I could smell it.
What?
Can you smell it? Smells of memories for you. So what we have coming to the table soon. This is
Yay!
for those of you that are listening to this show. You can check this out. We have our full-length episode on YouTube. Would love for you guys to go and check it out and subscribe. Hit that button. Hit that bell for the notifications, because you only get to watch this on YouTube. You can hear, but it's not the same. This is our segment of our cup ramyeon review. I need like a little intro sound song there, you know? It's like... Anyways, what we have today, we have a cup ramyeon. And that's for those maybe that aren't sure what a cup ramyeon is. It's an instant ramen noodle in a cup. And we're doing this today because we're going to rate this cup ramyeon. And there's a criteria here. And it's on a 5-point scale, 1 to 5, no decimals. And it is on flavor. It is on noodle. And it is on value. And I just realized we didn't update the price on this, but we'll get that price.
$183 per cup.
Shoot.
Is that expensive?
No, hold on. Well, damn it! I gotta write that down. Oh, you got. Oh, you wrote it down. Okay, you're good. All right, so here we go. This has been prepared by our very own executive chef here. Let's see if he did this well. All right. So I want to give a little backstory on this because I was hanging with Alice. And I was like telling her, I was like, "Yeah, we got this thing. It's a cup ramen review." And I was just like, "What's your favorite ramen?" And this is what.
I immediately samyang ramen.
Yeah. What's crazy though is that I've been eating cup ramen my whole life, and it's like I've never even heard of this, nor have I seen this before. But this is the small size, you know, and we've done a ton of these before. What is this size? I don't know how to explain this, but it's like the mini cup. It's a snack size. But this brand, Samyang Ramen, has been around since 1963. It's a long time. Some of you guys will recognize the label to this if you can see it. If you're watching our YouTube, that's what it looks like. You'll recognize the brand because they're the ones behind the Buldak Ramen, which is the... What is it? What did Noah Sandoval say? It was like chicken 2 times or spicy 2 times? The really spicy lemon. So these guys are the ones behind it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in here. And there you go. There we go. There's these little like, it looks like meatballs floating on the top. I don't know what it is. But first things first, flavor. Anyone can go whenever you're ready. It's a 1 to 5.
It's delicious,
Andy
right?
says delicious. Chef approved. Okay. Not gonna lie.
It's pretty good, right?
It's pretty good.
What about it?
I was like, I'm trying to think of what.
Classic, right?
Yeah, it's very like original.
It
Like,
has a good balance of spice without being too spicy, and then I feel like the flavor and the broth and the noodle.
yeah, it's not like overly salty. You know, it's and most ramyuns can be really salty. My tried and true, my first love ramyun, Shinramyeon. Nongshim, we're waiting for you. Sponsor this, but maybe if Samyang wants to come through. Also, 오세요. I have my number ready. How do you two feel about your flavor number?
Broth flavor?
Just like, yeah, flavor overall. Yeah.
It's a comparison to other ramyuns.
Kind of, yeah.
It's kind of hard to say. It's like whatever you're feeling.
I think it's a 4.
Okay.
That's what I
We've
was
got
gonna
our
say.
first number.
4.
Alice John, 4.
I was gonna say 4 also.
Mary Howard, 4. Chef Lim, 4. Wow. We're going to... Anjoleen?
gonna say 3.5.
There's
Can't
no
do
decimals.
Can't do
What?
yeah, that's why.
You're on the production team. Yeah. Let me
This is my
reiterate.
first day, Alice. Just give me some grace. When did we?
We've never had decimals.
We've
allowed.
never had decimals.
No.
You're right. Oh man,
It can be a 3. I can see why.
I'm gonna say 4 because I'm like, I just want it to be a little bit more rich, but I like it.
Yeah. I'm gonna actually go here. I'm gonna give it a 5, and I'll tell you why. Because to me, I love that this is not salty, and it's like balanced, but it's not supposed to be spicy. Although I do see there's like a little pepper right there, but it's nothing here says like, oh, this is spicy, but it's what I want.
Yeah, it's not as salty as I think some ramens that are spicy. Like for the amount of spice
Salty
you get.
spice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
salty spice.
but
yeah.
it's usually like if you want the full packet, you know you're gonna get the salt.
Yeah.
But you want the full spice, but that's where it's like more balanced.
That's the
So I was
Do
pleasantly
you always
surprised.
put in the packet, the full
wait,
packet.
The full packet.
I always put in like half.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, we got to go into ramyeon hacks one day on a separate segment here. We're gonna go into noodle though. Noodle 1 through 5. Whoever's ready, chef. He's doing research. He's like,
I'm gonna give it a 4.
okay. Anjoleen 4. Andy 4.
I'll just keep it interesting. 3. I think they could be even more 쫄깃쫄깃.
Yeah. Little chewier.
It's a little cardboardy.
I'd say it's like on par with like everything, you know, that usually in this category, except we've had a perfect 5 before.
Was it the udon?
No. It was with no. I was like preparing the announcement of our perfect score, but I don't know. Maybe we should let listeners, including Alice, find that episode because it's out there. Oh, it's out there. It's on the YouTube. Our perfect 5 ramyeon. Oh, wait. No, it's not out there. All right. I'm sorry. It's forever lost. Okay. It was. Should I say it? It was noguri. Noguri was our perfect 5 cup ramyeon. It was 555. Wow. Because the noodles are thicker.
I actually
you
don't
get
like
it.
a thicker noodle.
Okay. So then
But-
where are you on this one? Are you a
So
5
it's
on
also
this?
it's just interesting because I think I'm a 3, but it's because I'm trying to hold on.
I'm done. That was good.
It was so funny when we had Danny and Tim on this cup ramen review. And when they heard the price, and it was not the cheaper one. It was like on the more expensive of this snack size that we did. And they were like, holy shit, that's a 5 for sure. Like because they're so cheap, but we know better. All right. So noodle, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 3.
3.
Yeah.
I think it also doesn't feel like it holds up quite as well. Like I feel like the texture gets soggy faster maybe. I think that might be part of it. Like it loses the springiness.
Yeah.
It's still my favorite ramyeon though.
Okay. And value, we are at $1.83.
Is that pretty good?
Per cup.
I don't go around evaluating cup by cup
Yeah.
ramyeon prices, so
Where are you at $1.83 on this?
it's kind of expensive.
It's on. I will tell you from our research and extensive research on this. It is not exactly on the cheap side. We've had 89. We've had like probably like 78-cent snack size cup ramyons before on the show. So I know where the lowest of lows go, but we've also had like Andy. What was the most expensive?
$3?
We've had it was like $6. Yeah. I forgot who we
Primo.
splurged on.
This is medium.
Must have been like
primo.
a 3 Michelin star chef or something. So price wise, where are you guys at? Knowing that range is where we are at.
I have and will continue to pay for it.
Okay. So that's a 5 for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Mary?
Feels pretty good.
I think 5. Like I feel like for some of my favorite lamens are probably between $1 and $2. Decent.
Anjo, Andy, you guys are value $1.83, 5. Andy's a 5. Anjo, less than $2. Yeah, hold you down.
Taste of home.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a 5.
Okay,
180.
I agree. I'm with you guys. Thank you, Samyang, and thank you, Alice, for introducing us to this brand, or some of us.
I've had it, but I haven't
Yeah.
had it since I was middle schooler. I think when I was in Korea, I want to say.
Awesome. Very delicious. Thank you for that. We have a final question for you. If you could share some advice with your younger self, what would that advice be?
Younger self. I mean, the piece of advice that I would give to my younger self is the advice that I give to younger people in general. And I've been giving this advice for years, which is just to not be afraid of committing to your craft. Because a lot of people, especially these days, especially given the economy that we're all functioning in, like very few people, and it's not just about entrepreneurship, very few people, like, I feel like most people are afraid of getting pigeonholed a lot these days. They don't want to dive deep. But the satisfaction or the gratification that you're looking for isn't going to be there if you don't dig deep. It's like fundamentally what you need to be able to get that feeling of fulfillment.
I love that.
And I dug deep really early on, and I'm really glad that I did. It does feel like my future self was speaking to me when I made the decision.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I announced it to the whole world, but inside I was like, do or die.
I love that.
Right? So if you find something, even an inkling of a thing, because you can always cut and pivot if it doesn't work out, right? But if you find something where it sparks any sense of hope in you, you need to go after it, and you need to be ready to invest a bit into it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like we've asked this question to a lot of our guests, and I don't know if I've heard that one, but I love the idea of giving oneself wholeheartedly, to be convicted, to be, unapologetically just fully invested into what you're doing, and see what happens there.
Yeah. I mean, you can't expect to reap the rewards of something that feels huge if you don't see it through when it's small. And I think that concept of investment into yourself, deep pursuit of craft and artistry or mastery is like something that our culture is desperately lacking these days. And, the idea of putting all your eggs into one basket, like people like, and can't possibly. And
Yeah.
I get it, right? Like, it's a very competitive world out there. You want to hitch your ride onto the thing that is going to make it for you, but sometimes you have to make it yourself. Someone else isn't going to do it for you, So sometimes you kind of just have to, follow your heart and take that risk.
I love that. Where can people find out about what you're doing?
You can find out more about what we're doing by following us on Instagram. It's really our only form of marketing and sharing with people, whether it's an event in our tasting room, a new release, a tasting that we're doing at your local shop. You'll be able to find out all of the news about Hana Makgeolli on our Instagram, and we love being able to see people with our sool and trying it. So please tag us. And then, if you get a chance to go to Korea, it's not really about finding about Hana Makgeolli, but please, 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 if you get a chance to go to Korea, please pursue other sool.
Mm.
It's actually the best way to understand us, even though it's a bit indirect.
Yeah.
If you are able to experience the sool industry and the market the way it is in Korea right now, it's a very exciting time. So many young producers are making such incredible makgeolli in Korea. And this is the beginning of all of their projects. And if you want an early in and to see an evolution, like the way you've seen the evolution with Hana, now is the time to go. And yeah, I think what we're going to be tasting from the sool category in the next few years is going to be defining for the next 100, right? And it is, and I can't emphasize this enough, so lucky that sool gets this opportunity. Of course it's deserving of it, but when do you see the movement behind sool, in the way that it is in other products? It's quite rare, right? So for all of us, the young producers out there, stick to your production philosophy and stick to your beliefs. Don't take shortcuts. If you make a mistake, try to learn from it. And don't try to turn it into something else. Yeah, because you're going to be able to learn from and taste through and make new changes in the way you make your products by not hiding the mistakes you've made in the past. You have to share them and experience them. So that's what we, when I opened those bottles that were 4 years old, I tasted, you could taste so much on a slightly aged wine or a slightly aged sool. And I remember all the good decisions and the bad.
Love that.
Right? So sometimes you need to give it time and revisit things. So
cool. Your website, if anybody wants to go ahead and sign up for the wine club or a newsletter or just keep it on the bookmarks for when next time you're visiting New York, you can find them at hanamakgeolli.com. That's HANAMAKGEOLLI.com. We have a little gift, a little parting gift, because we just felt like you didn't drink enough this weekend. So this is a wonderful little gift from our sponsor, Cocktail Collective. This cocktail was made for you. It is refreshing, herbaceous, and a fruity version of the last word. And it's called East Meets West. And it's 1.5 ounces of West 32 Soju Original, an ounce of Company Flora Green, half an ounce of Chirot aloe liqueur, a half ounce lime, and half ounce lychee syrup. Shake it, serve it in a coupe, and enjoy. Cheers.
cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alice Jun.